What is business law and why is it important? Business law is a set of regulations and rules that allow a business to run legal operations while also keeping a positive social image and avoiding a loss in consumption due to stolen intellectual property. Let's begin with intellectual property. Intellectual property is basically an invention that is the result of creativity. Examples of this are paintings, logos, songs, and patents. If intellectual property is not kept secure, it is very easy for another person to reuse what someone else has created for their own profit or benefit. To prevent others from benefiting off of one's creativity, one can register copyrights and/or trademarks and also use watermarks for music and other forms of artwork. An example of a watermark is the well-known TMZ watermark that is plastered over their most famous images to ensure that no one else claims the image as their own and sells it to other brands. Also, trademark logos are very noticeable because of the popular TM superscript that many of us see on TV and billboards. Additionally, many companies store private information using strong access controls such as two-factor authentication and the consistent changing of passwords. This makes it very difficult for anyone seeking to steal information, as they will run into issues over and over. Another important form of business law is in legally binding contracts. These are extremely important, as any future disputes can be ignored if the dispute stems from a contract signed by both parties. When these contracts are signed, both parties must be adults, over the age of 18, otherwise the contract can be voided. This famously happened in 2017, when rapper Lil Pump was able to nullify a contract with Warner Brothers as he was only 16 when he signed it. Next, we will go into torts. What are torts? According to Cornell Law University, a tort is an act or omission that gives rise to injury or harm to another and amounts to a civil wrong for which courts impose liability. In the context of torts, injury describes the invasion of any legal right, whereas harm describes a loss or detriment that an individual suffers. There are three types of torts: intentional, negligence, and liabilities. Intentional torts are when these injuries or harm that amounts to civil wrongs are done on purpose. For example, slander, fraud, insider trading, and stealing intellectual properties are intentional torts. Negligence torts, however, are when these injuries or harm that amount to civil wrongs are done because of laziness and poor conditions instead of intent. For instance, a negligent tort could be a workplace accident, such as inhaling toxic chemicals without protection or getting hit by a falling object. A liability is when a company is legally responsible for something but doesn't hold through on its promise. For example, a defective RC car that overheated and exploded, harming the customer, would be a liability. There are three types of compensation for torts. The first is compensatory. This is basically a settlement, and the party that harmed the other pays a sum of money or something with monetary value. The second type is punitive. In a punitive settlement, there is further punishment to ward off the offending party from ever repeating similar payment. For instance, if a worker wins a case for a tort where he slipped on some stairs and fell, the court may require the business to carpet the stairs so that it is harder to fall down. The last type of compensation for a tort is an injunctive settlement. An injunctive settlement, a legal order is passed to change the defendant's behavior. For example, a worker may have developed a lung disease because of his workplace containing toxic chemicals, and the workers were not warned or did not know this. In the injunctive tort, the court would require the business to not only monetarily compensate the worker, but also create new safety regulations or refrain from the activity where workers are exposed to toxic chemicals completely. There are more examples of torts in the written content for this Udemy course.